Welcome back to another episode of Smalls That Sell and Making Money with Woodworking. This is all about high profit, low cost items where we take what is hot at the big box stores, we break it down, we actually figure out how they built it. That way we can replicate that item and make it unique by putting our own twist to it. My original intention was to actually go into the Hobby Lobby and actually break this stuff down in the store as I'm taking it off the shelf, because it's actually a lot easier to learn how to break these items down with the item in your hand. But ran into a small issue, walked into the store and Kenny G's playing his jam in the background, okay? So that's copywritten. But I was still able to get footage of a lot of awesome items that we will break down in this video. So let's go ahead and get our Hobby Lobby hack on. And we're gonna go ahead and roll some footage. So I'm actually in the store here chilling with some Kenny G, and we're gonna pause this right here because I'm just gonna give you a quick, interesting insight to the marketing side of Hobby Lobby. If you will ever notice that any Hobby Lobby that you ever go in across the United States, they will always be playing relaxing music and they will always have some type of scent. I'm really not for sure exactly what it is. It's almost like a fresh cut flowers or something like that, even though there's nothing fresh cut in the whole store. It's all fake. But both of those are styles of marketing. The Kenny G or the soft music slows your pace down while you're shopping. It actually slows the customer down, relaxes them, and is actually proven to produce more sales. And then the scent. They want every store that you go into to have that same familiar smell as well as that relaxing sound. That way you feel more at home, you feel more relaxed, and you'll buy more. There's just a quick tip, just so you'll know that you're getting played anytime you go into a store like that. So this first one, I just walked into the first aisle that I could find that had mostly woodworking items in it and came across this. So this is just a little tabletop decorative item, okay? So this thing is not very big. It's only a 10 by 10. And what caught my eye was the dowels going across with the letters actually able to spin on those. And the other thing that caught my eye was they were wanting $25 for this, and I could see just how easy it was to make. Okay, so let's break this down. The sides going all the way around are 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches by 3/4 inch thick. They put 45-degree miters in the corners. The blocks are 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches by 1 inch thick with a hole drilled through the center. Those dowel rods, those are 1/4 inch dowel rods, so I'm going to say that the holes in the center of the blocks are about 3/8 inch. And you can see from this angle exactly how they inserted the dowels, because there are holes on one side of this but not on the other. So that's all that they did on one side board, was make a little bit of a counterboard just so that that dowel can actually just slide in there, probably through a little bit of wood glue. And then on the other side of it is a hole drilled all the way through it. That way you can feed the dowel, add your letters as you go, and then lock it into that counterboard. What really caught my eye about this was the possibilities that you could get it to say anything. Okay, so what they have is just love you more, and the writing that's on these blocks, you can just do this with stamps or stencils. So I'd pick up a cheap capitalized letter 1 inch stencil set or stamp set from Amazon and use those to put your letters on these blocks. So just look up some trending sayings. Okay, so in these corners I could not find a brad nail. I could not find anything except for this. So this wood has not been stained, so what that is CA glue. That's all that they have done, is they have taken a little bit of wood glue, put that in, put CA glue in this corner to act as a clamp while the wood glue dried, and then they moved on. If it were me, I would go ahead and glue this up and throw some brad nails on this, depending on how fancy you wanted to get. You could put some finger joints, whatever that you would like. Again, this is a $25 item from Hobby Lobby. I think you could make these, sell these with the seasons all day long for 20 bucks a piece. And altogether, you'd only have 2 or 3 bucks in this whole build. And once you get your process down, you could probably throw this thing together in less than 20 minutes. And what actually stopped me on this next one was that it was a board with a rope, and I needed to see how much they were charging for this thing. Well, they were charging $25 for this, and it is literally a board and some rope. This board is 6 inches wide by 16.5 inches long, but the more that I looked at it, it's actually pretty cool. So they have designed this, of course, to look like an old swing that you would have, you know, hanging off of a tree limb, you know, outside of your house. So kind of a nostalgic item. But they have actually designed this thing so it can be used as a shelf. And that's all that they have done, is taken some rope like this. When you're buying this stuff, buy it in bulk, because it is a lot cheaper than buying it by the foot. So all that they have done is taken this 6-inch board, moved in 1 inch and up 1 inch, and then drilled a hole the diameter of their rope. Now, as far as the board itself, you can paint it up, distress it up any way that you would like. Again, try to find colors that are in. So all that they have done is taken 2 pieces of rope. And now you can do this 2 different ways, but on the back of this thing, the back rope either has to be shorter, or whenever you go to tie your knot underneath, it has to be higher up. The knot in this rope, which is what you're going to use to hang it to the wall, is in the center. So whenever you go to hang this, it's going to lean like this. So either the back rope is actually shorter, pulling the back up, or they've just tied the knots underneath up a little bit further. I'm going to say there's probably going to be 3/4 or an inch difference in that, but that will bring that to level. So you may just have to play around with it a little bit until you get the exact length, and then you can duplicate that. So I'm just going to show you what they've done. Let's say that they've made their adjustments from the underneath on the back of it to bring it to level. They've taken 2 pieces of rope that are the exact same length, and at the top they have just tied a knot in it. And this is what will actually be used to hang this on the wall. Your remaining 4 points, those are going to be going to the 4 corners of this shelf, going through and then tying a knot in the bottom. It's as easy as that. A board and some rope, 25 bucks. Depending on how you distress these things and how you market these things, I would say for $10 to $15, you'd have no issues at all moving these things. And so this next one caught my eye because, again, how easy it is to build and the price. So they are wanting $65 for this. I'm calling it a long farmhouse box. And this is going to be another decoration style item. So this will actually sit outside on their porches. It'll sit inside of their house, or maybe even hanging on the wall to put mail and things like that in. And if you're going to do something like that, then throw some little hooks on the front. That way you could actually hang some keys and things like that on there. Okay, so this thing is 32 inches long by 8 inches tall at the tallest point and 6 inches wide. Let's go ahead and talk about these parts for a minute. This front horizontal plate, it's a 1/2 inch thick by 3 inches tall. The divider and the 2 end pieces, those are 3/4 inch thick and only about 5 inches wide. Remember, this thing's only 6 inches total. And with the front slat and the one in the back, that's going to be 6 inches. If it was me, just because I like fence pickets, I'll build this whole thing out of fence pickets. And then the 2 back slats, they look to be about 2 inches wide each. And then the bottom board, I'm not sure why, they actually used a piece of 3/8 material. I actually saw a lot of things built out of 3/8 material. But if you're using 5-inch picket material and you've already used it for the end, go ahead and just use the exact same material for the bottom. If it were me, I would actually inset that bottom. I think that it would clean this look up a little bit, and maybe even consider making this thing a little narrower and insetting the rest of the parts as well. But this was the fastest, easiest way to do it. And as you can see by looking at the back, all of these parts have been stained, except for the back. You can tell that they use pine and some other type of wood there. Everything is pretty much butt joint. That's all that they've done is glued and put brad nails in this. You can actually see some white spots in some of the stain where they assembled this whole thing before they stained it. I would recommend staining all of your parts before putting this thing together. And the hardest part of this build, which is not hard at all, is going to be the 2 end pieces and the centerpiece. Okay, so the divider, just because it has that arch to it. And so this is how I would do the end pieces and the divider. So I'd take a 5 by 8 inch board. I'd measure 4 inches up, is over, and then straight back up to the top. That will leave us 2 inches on this side. This is going to be a 90-degree angle here, and you notice that this one's actually arched. You can find something around if you want to be perfect, but this is rustic farmhouse, so you do not have to be perfect. Just kind of make a little swooping arch like that. And then the same thing for this top corner. You see where it's kind of rounded over. So that's all you're going to do is just bring it over just a little bit. Then take your jigsaw, cut this out. Once you have your first one made, use that one as the template for the other 2, or if you're going to mass produce these, use it as a template for every single one. Then once you have all of your pieces cut, I would just glue, brad nail all of this stuff together. Looks like that the only thing that they have actually distressed is the top board. You wouldn't even have to do that if you're staining this like the rest of it, but they did a little bit of whitewashing, just a really light coat of almost dry brushed white paint just going across that top board. And that's really all there is to it. It's as simple as that. So with all of these parts combined, if you're using picket material, probably take a picket and a half to make this whole thing, but you can knock this out really quick, put your own twist to it. I do not like these colors. I would paint these things up, distress these things up, and I really think that they would sell, especially if you're going for the modern rustic like we discussed in other videos where this will actually be inside of the house. But again, you'll have less than $5 in this whole thing. They're selling them for $65. For something like this, you'll have to test the market on it in your area because every area is different. But I would think that you wouldn't have any issues getting $40–45 out of something like this. And this next one I actually found pretty close to the last one, and it is a farmhouse tray. We've talked about trays before, about how everyone loves these rustic looking trays, and this one's pretty neat because it's a large tray. So it's large and kind of short. So this is 26 inches long by 15 inches wide. Each one of the bottom boards of this is 5 inches wide, fence picket material. I would find some thin ones. You know how it is, you pick up a bundle of fence pickets and you find some of those real thin ones that they sneak in there on you. Perfect for something like this because we're not using screws, we're using brad nails. So for the sides of this tray, they're only 3 inches tall, and they actually butt up against the bottom boards, and the ends are only 3.5 inches tall at the tallest point. The reason why it looks taller than that is because it's actually sitting on top of the bottom boards, whereas the two sides actually sit even with the bottom boards. Now, the corners of this thing, that's all that they have done is taken a jigsaw, cut off that sharp corner. Does not have to be anything fancy. And then the handle. We've talked about making these handles before. I would just drop down about 1 inch or so, outline the design of your handle, then take a drill bit that is wider than your jigsaw blade, make a hole there, start your jigsaw, and actually cut this handle out from the inside. Do the same thing for the opposite. And again, before assembling any of this, I would go ahead and put on any type of stain or paint that you would like to do, but this is a perfect build to get rid of any of the material that you have that may have a crack or a defect in it, because again, this is the rustic look. They're wanting this to look like that it was found out in an old barn. So those defects add character, and if you do not have the material with enough defects in it, I would actually put my own in there. I've covered in other videos how to make the fake saw marks, how to actually make the old nail marks, things like that. And like I said, the cool thing about this is that it's so big, so people will put this like in the center of their table, and then they would put like a centerpiece and salt and pepper shakers, things like that. They're getting $55 a piece for these things. Again, this is a super simple build. I think if you put these things together and actually spend some time on the rustic detail of these things, that you have no issue selling these things for $35, $40 a piece. So if you're still with me at this point of the video and you think that I've earned to subscribe, make sure to do that by clicking my logo down in the corner. And just an FYI for anyone out there that may be interested in joining our Patreon community, it is growing like crazy. We now have over 200 members, and that is awesome. So if you're interested in what that's all about, I'll throw a link into the description and you can check that out. If you remember in some of our past videos, I've talked about how items and geometric shapes are in. They want $75 for this Hexagon Shelf. So this is another one of those really cool items that looks complicated, but is not at all. And you can actually see here whenever I take it off the shelf, I'm actually surprised on how this thing is put together. Staples. They use staples all on the back to hold these 3 hexagons together. So of course, after seeing this in the store, I actually had to come back and make one of these just to show you guys how easy that this is. This is the Hexagon Shelf. I actually made this right before recording this out of 1 fence picket. And not only was I able to make this out of 1 fence picket, but I actually had an extra one left. So the cool thing about these geometric shapes is if you do not like this design, you can change it up. You do not have to put this one here. You can put it up here or down below. I've seen them in several different ways. This was the one that they had in the store, so it's the one that I made. So this one actually cost me $3.50. It's actually a little high because you can essentially make it for $2. They're wanting $75, and it's a cool item. So the benefits of this type of item is actually building up. You can build it for next to nothing, and there's a high market value. What is the next thing that we consider? Okay, is our time. How much time will it take us to build this? It took me less than 5 minutes to assemble this whole thing, and maybe 5 minutes of cutting my parts. So the parts themselves, super easy because they're all the exact same part. That's all that I did was rip my picket down to 2 boards that were 2.5 inches wide. Went to the miter saw, set it at 30 degrees because 30 degrees is what you need to make a hexagon. Each one of these sides of the hexagon are 5 3/4 of an inch long. So I just set a stop at 5 3/4 of an inch. This is going to be sitting upright against the fence. Cut my first 30 degree, flip the board, move it down, another 30 degree, flip the board, move it down, cut it again. You're doing this, repeating this step over and over until you have all of your parts. It's as easy as that. And then at that point, you have every single part that you need to make this. If you've watched the channel for very long, you know that I love jigs. So let me show you this super simple jig that I made. It would speed up the process of putting those corners together. Anytime that you have any type of a mitered corner with glue, you know that it tends to slip. Anytime that you put pressure from a nail gun on there, well, with something like this, it does not. It's all that is scrap wood that is holding that 30-degree angle in place over and over again. And there's the proof of how long it took me to put one of these hexagons together just by using a simple jig. And really, I just told you every single step on how to build this and how easy that it is. But if you would actually like the plans for this, head over to my Etsy shop. I'll throw a link in the description. I'll throw a cheap set of plans in there, and I always get asked about the jigs. And I'll also put a layout template in there for making the jig. And then as far as attaching these hexagons together, like I said, they do not have to be in this shape. I actually put a couple screws in mine, but honestly, just some wood glue and some brad nails would probably do the trick. So they're wanting $75 for this. And we know that we can make these things for less than $4 and really, really fast. So pricing for something like this is going to really depend on how many of them that you would like to move. Just keep in mind that whenever I say to test the market in your area, because prices fluctuate, drastically depending on where you live. Always start pricing your items just a little bit high, see how they perform, and you can always decrease the price of the item if you need to. It's a lot easier to go down in price than it is to go up in price. And this next one caught my eye because it's pretty cool. It is supposed to look like a vintage window, so larger items that are priced decently will catch people's eye. So this thing is 27 inches wide by 35 inches tall, and it's priced at $75. So after looking at this thing and seeing the price, I knew that I could make this thing for probably less than $5, so it made the list. So this thing is very simple to make, and I actually think that they made it more difficult by trying to be cheap with it. So what kind of surprised me about this is that the front of every one of these pieces is a 1/4 inch like veneer of real wood, but the back, like glued to each piece, is a piece of MDF. So it's almost like they cut this profile out and then just stuck the real pieces of wood to it. And also something else that surprised me about this is the centerpiece where it looks like, you know, the window would open. That is a single board that goes down. That's all that they've done is cut a groove in that and painted it black to make it look like it was 2 separate windows. It'd be just as easy to make 2 separate parts and then just join those together. So we're going to say we're not going to be using MDF for this. We're just going to be using pallet wood, fence picket material, 2x4 material, whatever that you would like to use. So whatever material that you have decided to use, we're going to make these as 2 separate panels. For the outsides and the tops, we're going to be using 1 3/4 inch material, and then for the cross slats, we're going to be using 1.5 inch material. The thickness is going to be up to you, but it'd be nice if it was thick enough to throw a couple of pocket holes in the end of each one of the slats that go across. And then actually whenever you go to join your 2 panels together, you can put those together with pocket hose as well. And then the hardware on the outside, that's all those are very cheap hinges. You can pick those up off of Amazon, and really doesn't even make sense the way that they have it designed there, because if you notice on one side, the hinges have 3 of the little loops. On the other side, they have 2 of the little loops. Those are actually made so they can interlock together. So it's all that they've done is taken a cheap hinge, knocked the pin out, and then taken those 2 parts and put them on the outside edges of these windows. There's nothing intricate about the way that they are installed. They're just installed right on the surface. So they're not inset, they're not anything like that. So super easy. The latch in the middle, Amazon. Just type in vintage window latch. I bet you could pick them up for just a couple bucks. Okay, so before you put the hardware on, distress it up, paint it up, stain it up however that you would like. All that they have done is painted the whole thing black. Even some cheap black spray paint will work. Let that dry. You go over the top of it with just some white paint, and then you just lightly sand the whole thing until it kind of gets to that distressed look that you're going for. And really, that's all there is to it. They want $75 for this, and I guarantee you I could build this thing for $5 or $6. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you were able to learn something from this video. You saw how easy most of these projects went together, how easy that they would be to build. And if you saw something that you would like to build and you're a little bit hesitant on whether you can do it or not, you can. Fear of failure is the reason why people do not succeed and do not get out of their comfort zones. Well, I'm here to tell you, you've got this. So until next time, guys, go build something. See ya.